Well, I don't know what your reaction is to that clip, but it is an interesting take on Jesus' life. The He Gets Us series is a number of videos that are online that came out a few months back that remind us that Jesus was a human. He walked among us. He was like us. He gets what we were going through. And I noticed in a lot of the videos that when I was looking through them, a lot of them are oriented towards going through difficult times, stress or loneliness or heartache, and Jesus gets us. And then there was this one on a positive spin, and sometimes I think maybe that same thing, and I think that's why they put this in here, reminds us that Jesus was not unbalanced. That Jesus, there was good times and there was a lot of celebration and laughter and fun. But there was also some hard times too, and some difficulties. And he was there. He experienced that, the highs and lows of life. He went through that with us. And sometimes, though, we tend to think, did Jesus have fun? It almost and to have in church, to throw out some candies and have fun is that okay to do something like that? I did a Google search on just said Jesus laughing. And this is what I took a screenshot and of all the different faces and artist conceptions and whatnot that people have put together, just depicting Jesus laughing. And we can imagine that. He must have. He had some good times. And yet the Bible never said Jesus laughed. It said Jesus wept when Lazarus died. But it doesn't say that he laughed. Although I think when we read the scriptures, we can see that he used humor, and there were a number of things that make us think that Jesus was smiling when he said that. And even in creation, look at creation. Jesus was involved in creation, and I just wonder, like when God, stretched out the neck of the giraffe, do you not think that he smiled and laughed a little bit when he did that one? Or what about the ostrich, and he designed it to put its head in the ground, or the mating call of an ape. Yeah, I'm sure God must have laughed when he put that together. Or the octopus with 8 legs. I wonder if when Moses came across the burning bush and did that double take, like it's not being burned up. And Jesus, God must have been smiling when Moses took that second look, right? Or when Jonah got thrown up on the beach, dripping of gastric juices and smelling like fish breath, I'm sure God must have must have made him smile to see that. Or when Jesus fed 5,000 people with a boy's lunch, and the amazement on the disciples' faces. Can you imagine Jesus looking with a big grin on his face like, yeah, that's pretty cool, eh? And it's just, there were times when Jesus must have been smiling and laughing and enjoying life. It was part of who he was. When I was looking at some scriptures, one of the ones that I came across that I thought I'd just stop on is in John chapter 2. Jesus visits a wedding. And it says in John chapter 2 and verse 1, on the third day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. It's an interesting discussion on the third day, and what does that mean on the third day? Some preachers like to get into that. On the third day, Jesus rose from the dead, right? And on the third day, Jesus came out of obscurity and started his ministry. As the quiz pointed out, Jesus' first miracle was turning water to wine. Okay, that's cool. So did he, is that why he talks about the third day here? And, you can maybe make a good sermon out of that, but it's probably not why John wrote the third day. When we look at the text and we say, well, what happened 3 days before? Because John is actually quite meticulous in saying the next day, the next day, the next day, and spelling out a few days in order around this time. And so you go back, 3 days, what happened? Well, on that day, a guy named Nathaniel became a follower of Jesus. He said yes to Jesus. Says, I'm going to follow this guy. He's quite astounding. and realized that there was something here that's really probably was the Son of God. And so he began following Jesus on 3 days before that. So, but why would Jesus mark that day on the third day? Or why did John say on the third day from that? It did say, and I did a little more research on it, that we know that Nathanael actually came from Cana, which has made me stop and say, whoa. So he just started following Jesus, and 3 days later he ends up back in his hometown at a wedding. I wonder if that had something to do with it. But again, it's like, but I don't know why. So why did his disciples go to this wedding? Well, it says in the next verse, in verse 2, Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. So we say, okay, well, that would explain why he's there. He was invited. But you still have a choice when you're invited. He was invited to the wedding. And not only him, but his friends, his disciples, right? He had at least 5 by this point. And they joined him at the wedding, and at this wedding celebration. I wonder, like, were all of them known? I mean, certainly Nathanael would have been known. He was from that area. But, Jesus, bring your buddies along. It's okay. The more the merrier. Can't really do that at modern weddings. But they invited Jesus and these new followers who had just started working with Jesus. Was it a family wedding? Was it a friend's wedding? We don't know. The text doesn't say, but Jesus went there and joined in. Why? Well, he's invited, but why did he choose to go? We know from the other writers of Scripture that at this same time there were some challenging things Jesus had gone through in the last few days. He had just spent 40 days in the wilderness without food. I think a wedding would sound pretty good. Food pretty good after that, right? He'd just done battle with Satan and temptations. He started breaking in a new team of disciples. He'd just recently left home. There was some tough stuff that Jesus was dealing with in the last little while. So maybe just to get away at a wedding, relax with some family and friends and some good food. Yeah, after a tough few weeks, you can almost see like, yeah, this will be fun. Anyway, we read on. When it says that when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." So a problem's come up. They ran out of wine. This would be a rather embarrassing situation for the caterer or the host, and they would be a little concerned. Okay, we're running out of wine. These parties go on quite a while, and to run out is rather embarrassing. And Jesus' mother go to Jesus. And why would she go to Jesus? I mean, he hadn't done any miracles yet. Really? What's he going to do about it? Well, she probably knew Jesus well enough that knew that he was helpful and dependable, and maybe he had an idea. We need help. So Jesus' mother goes to him and says, "Wait, there's no more wine." Jesus responds, "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." It's not time yet. But you get an inkling, you get a sense that Mary knows that Jesus is able to do something about this. Just in Jesus' response, right? My hour has not yet come yet. It's not time to reveal who I am. You see, Mary knows who Jesus is. That was revealed to her back at the birth by the angel. She knows that this is the Son of God. And maybe he can help in this situation. And Jesus says, not yet, not yet. But then his mother goes on and says, his mother says to his servants, "Do whatever he tells you." It almost gives you a sense that Mary maybe was helping with the catering or in charge. Maybe it was a family wedding or something going on. But Mary says to the servants at the wedding, just do whatever he says. She'd learned something, even though she was the mom, that listening to Jesus, learning from Jesus, was a good thing to do. Do whatever he tells you. I don't know what she expected him to do. Maybe to go out and buy some. Maybe he knew of some stash somewhere. Maybe Jesus could do something. He was a resourceful guy. I'm not sure what was in her mind, but she said to the servants, just do what Jesus says to do. I'm leaving him in charge. Anyway, it goes on, verse 6. Nearby stood these 6 stone water jars. Always thinking about a stone water jar, how heavy a jar would be made out of stone. And then look at the size of it. The kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Can you imagine the weight and the size of those things? They're huge, right? Big. Water gallon, 20 to 30 gallons. And there's 6 of them, 120 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, next verse, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. That's an interesting little note there. And just fill them right to the top. Jesus said, fill them. Mary said, do whatever he says. Okay, he said, fill them. Let's fill them right to the brim, right to the top. They did it completely. Then he told them, now, draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. And they did so. That's what Jesus said to do. So we're not sure why we're doing this. It seems like a strange thing to do. But Jesus said we'll do it, so we'll give it a shot. So they dip some in, and they take it to the master. They did so. It says, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. So not everybody knew. But those who brought the water up, the servants, I would think since Jesus was involved, maybe his disciples helped with that too. Given that they knew about this, we'll find out later. Anyway, these servants, they knew what had happened, where the host and the others didn't. Then it says he called the bridegroom aside and said, listen, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best until now. What's with that? There is, and you think about it, there is an abundance of it. 120 gallons. That's a lot. Plus. And it's the high quality type. The quantity and the quality as there. And Jesus saved the day. He saved the embarrassment. He saved the caterer or host, whoever. He saved them of the embarrassment of running out. And he extends the fun. The party can go on. Sometimes these Jewish weddings would go on for a few days with dancing and celebrating. It is a big deal. I was wondering how Jesus and his disciples stopped in at it. No doubt they enjoyed the food, they enjoyed the drink, they enjoyed the family time and the fun and the dancing and everything that went on. Jewish people were famous for singing and dancing, and no doubt Jesus took part of it in that. I don't expect he would sat over in a corner by himself, but he took part in it. And why not? He's planning a big wedding someday. And maybe he could use the practice, right? And in dancing and just celebrating with this couple. And then it says in the last verse, in verse 11, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs. It's the word John used, the first of the signs. John has a whole bunch of signs. Signs point you to something. This is the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. He revealed who he really was, that he was in fact the Son of God. And his disciples believed in him. They said, wow, he did something no one else could do. He did something pretty amazing here. He turned all this water into the wine, so that the celebrating and the party and this wedding could just keep on going. If you follow Jesus long enough, you're bound to bump into a miracle here and there, because Jesus is a miracle worker. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes Jesus will say things like, it's not my time. In this case, he changed his mind and said, okay, he did a favor, right? I love the TV series on the life of Jesus called The Chosen. Many of you have watched that, about the life of Christ. And in the first season, in episode 5, they highlight the wedding. It goes on actually beyond that, show that even that one episode. But the wedding is a pretty big deal in kicking off Jesus' ministry. And it's such a joy-filled celebration, as weddings are. And Jesus took part. In fact, he started. It was sort of the mark. This is the first sign. This was the beginning point from when he started his ministry. And it was at a celebration. It was at a wedding. So let me ask the question I asked at the beginning. What was the purpose? Why did Jesus go? Well, we answered, first of all, well, he was invited. It said in chapter 2, verse 1, right? He was invited to go. Yeah, but he didn't have to go. He was off. He was getting ready. He's beginning this work to choose his disciples and get his ministry going. And so he went. Maybe he was close to the people getting married. We don't know. We don't know the connection to the family. But he was invited, and he chose to go and bring along his newly appointed disciples. A second thing we could say as far as purpose, it wasn't to show, it was not to turn water into wine. That was a favor. That wasn't the plan. Going into it, the way Jesus reacts, I think it's safe to assume that Jesus hadn't planned to do that. But he responded, did a favor, because of Mary had asked him to do it. And even though it wasn't his time yet, he said, okay, I can do that. And so he does something rather unusual. But that's probably not why he went then. It doesn't sound like that is the reason he went, to suddenly kick off his public ministry and show his glory. And the third one I talk about is it wasn't to show his power. See, the wedding host didn't even know where the wine came from. In fact, it was just the servants who knew, and the disciples, because they believed. So some knew, some didn't know. So you would say, well, that's probably, he didn't do it to show his power, although that became obvious that he had power. But why did he go? And it wasn't to preach a sermon, or there's no record of him speaking up and talking, or giving a speech of any kind at the wedding. He was just there, celebrating along with everyone else. So why did he go? Well, maybe it's the same reason most people go. Maybe just to have fun, for the food, the friends, the celebration, to support the new couple. He just wanted to have a good time. And he gets us, because we're wired that way too, aren't we? How many people work all week for the weekend, right? To have that time off, the break, to have fun, to do what they like to do most. We have a desire to have fun and to do fun things and to make life fun. And Jesus liked to do that too. And he gets us. He gets that feeling. In fact, there's another time later on, as Jesus is going through quite a bit later, he got a reputation as someone who liked to go to parties. It says in Matthew is the one who records this, in Matthew 11, verse 19, Jesus says, the Son of Man, speaking of himself, came eating and drinking, and they, the religious leaders, criticized him and saying, here's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. I mean, that wasn't the case. Jesus wasn't a drunkard, but yeah, he hung out with people that maybe the religious people wouldn't approve of. But Jesus liked to hang out. He ate with them. He drank with them. He celebrated. He had fun with them. And some of the people who, criticized Jesus, people who didn't see eye to eye with Jesus, criticized him and said, look at him. He's a glutton and drunkard. And Jesus says at the end, but wisdom is proved right by her deeds. It wasn't about the reputation. It doesn't matter what they say. Look what's happening here. People are coming to Jesus. People far from God, and you wouldn't think would have any interest in God, were coming and enjoying their time with Jesus. Jesus was including them. says, look at what's happening. Wisdom is proved by her deeds. People realized that they mattered to Jesus, and so they liked them, and they came to hear him. It's surprising how often in Scripture we see Jesus eating and drinking and celebrating with people and having fun with people. And so when we think of Jesus, we often think of the cross, we think of some of the hardships, we think of his rejection and his healing people who are going through difficult times, and the empathy and how he shared with them in their hardship. But he also had fun. It says in, Solomon wrote these words in the Old Testament. He had a bit of a poem on the seasons of life, and he says this: there's a time to weep and a time to laugh. There's a time to mourn and a time to dance. And what he's pointing out is that we go through the ups and downs of life, and life has a way of dealing some difficult situations, but also some fun things. And we have those ups and downs. Some of you are going through lows, and some of you are going through highs. Some of you are knowing what it means to weep, and you've felt heartache and felt the brokenness of things going wrong. Others are celebrating and having the time of their life. I was at a wedding yesterday, and it was fun. It was celebrative. It was two Christian people that loved the Lord and spoke up, and it was just about their faith, and it was just a great celebration. There was some dancing and time at the end, and people were laughing. Knowing that I was preaching on this today, I spent extra time just sitting around looking at expressions in people's faces, and they're talking and laughing and singing and dancing, and the joy that was a part of that. There's a time for that. There's a time to laugh, and there's a time to dance. And there's a time we go through difficulties. This week, I wasn't sure if I should admit this, but I heard that Taylor Swift's new album came out this week, and so I said, I probably should make myself aware of what she's singing, because so many people like her. So I said to my Google Home, Google Home, play the new Taylor Swift songs. And sure enough, it pops up and plays a song, and I listen to it, and then it goes, and then the second song is, I think, this is Lauren Daigle. I hear her all the time. This is not Taylor Swift. And then there's another song and another Lauren Daigle song. And I was like, wait a minute, I asked for Taylor Swift, and you're playing this, Lauren Daigle Christian musician. And I think the reason for that, I realized as I thought about it, well, that's who my wife wants to play all the time. And we share the same Google Home. And so they probably switched over to that. Since I don't pay for a subscription, I don't have a Spotify account, the algorithm just starts to mix up all these songs and just put them on there. And then I noticed the Lauren Daigle kept coming up and doing two songs over and over and over again. And of course they do this to irritate me so that I'll buy a subscription, right? That's the way they want to do this. But it's interesting, there's two songs, and they played them like 3 times in a row each. And it's like back to back, 2 Lauren Daigle songs. And they were complete opposite songs. One of them was called Be Okay. It's a song about someone who's gone through a really low time and really hurting. And the song is a song of comfort. You're going to be okay. God will be there. He'll help you through this. You're going to be okay. It seems dark now, but you'll be okay. And then the second song it played for me, was These Are the Days. And if you're familiar with that song, it's an upbeat, high-energy, bouncy, party kind of song. These are the days that we're dreaming of. And it's a celebration song. Couldn't be 2 more opposite songs. And as I was listening to the songs, when I got beyond the irritation of thinking over and over, I thought to myself, that's so life, isn't it? There's the ups and the downs. Jesus knew the ups and the downs. And so when I went into this series and I outlined it, I looked at, I have all these sort of going through tough times, Jesus gets us. And then I saw this one video that says, no, I need to remind us We need to be reminded that Jesus wants us to have good times. He wants us to celebrate too. And so maybe the family discussions need to be, or the time with friends needs to be as you go into this week, what can we do to increase the fun in our lives? Especially if you've been through a hard time. What are the fun things what can we do to lift our spirits? What can we do to see that we enjoy life again? What can we do? Now, some of you have this nailed. You've got some teenagers, they think this way all the time, right? What's the fun thing to do? Even kids are so fun this way. Everything's new and exciting. Somehow as we get older, stuff builds up, right? And sometimes the fun factor can get squeezed out because of the stress and the difficulties of life. But we're reminded, there is a time to weep, but there's a time to laugh too, and a time to celebrate. And I don't know where you are on that scale, on that balance. If you've spent too much on the negative, dealing with hardship, then I pray that God will help you through that. And maybe give you more balance. And maybe it's a decision you can make. Maybe there's some things you can do to help bring that balance back. And maybe some things you can talk about with your spouse, your family. Maybe it's your marriage that's gotten kind of stale. It's gotten kind of old feeling. And there hasn't been a lot of laughter and a lot of joy. Well, maybe it's time you had that discussion of, hey, let's do something to bring some of that joy back into our lives. Remember the day we got married? Where did the joy go? Let's do something. And let's strategize. Let's be creative. Let's think about how we can have some more fun. It's an important part of life. The ups and downs, I used to like to think, I want everything to be up. But in life, sometimes we need the downs too. In fact, roller coasters are a lot more fun because of the ups and downs. And life is too. So we embrace the hard times, but we celebrate and we enjoy the good times. And wherever you are on that balance, and maybe you're feeling this morning, we need more of one or the other. You're not going to ask for more hard times, I guess. But celebrate and thank God for the good times. And create more of them if you can. Whatever you do, because God wants us and has designed us. And being in the image of God, I believe God would want us, that God does have a sense of humor. And He would like us to have fun too in life. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, I just thank you for this reminder today that life is meant to be enjoyed and lived to the full. You have brought so many blessings into our lives and created so much joy. Lord, I would just pray that for each person here, that you would help us to reflect and evaluate and think, God, Lord, just show us the way forward and what you would want for us in our lives. Lord, thank you for Jesus and the model that he was, and that he liked to celebrate with his friends too. God, I just ask your blessing on those who are finding it hard to celebrate. And I just pray that this morning that you would be near to them and remind them that there will be ups again. We don't stay down forever, because there is a season for everything. In Jesus' name.